The narrative unfolds in Belmarsh, a notorious prison in London notorious for housing murderers, rapists, and other violent offenders. Among the inmates is Cain Burgess, a robust man marked by a scarred visage. His intimidating appearance reflects the emotional and physical toll of his incarceration. Beneath this hardened exterior, however, lies a fundamentally good person, altered by the brutal realities of prison life, capable of lethal violence. One grim day, Cain is escorted under heavy guard to visit his ailing mother in the hospital. Upon reaching her bedside, he discovers that she has just passed away. The realization that he could have bid her farewell had he arrived sooner fills him with profound sorrow, yet he remains stoic. Years of imprisonment have conditioned him to suppress his emotions. After a fleeting moment with his mother, Cain prepares to depart. While in the elevator with the guards, he unexpectedly launches a ferocious assault. His movements are quick and merciless, leaving the guards unable to respond. Despite their resistance, Cain swiftly overpowers them. The confrontation escalates to such a degree that the guards are rendered unconscious, their bodies collapsing through the elevator floor. Seizing the opportunity, Cain escapes through a rear exit of the hospital. Later, Cain tries to gain entry into a private bar but is confronted by the bouncers. A scuffle ensues, but Cain's strength and combat skills allow him to easily subdue them. Once inside, he encounters a lively and chatty bartender named Bez. During their relaxed exchange, Cain introduces himself as a member and orders a tall glass of beer. As he enjoys his drink, he attentively listens to a group seated across the bar, who are members of a gang that has recently fallen silent due to two distressing incidents: the murder of one of their own, Rook, and the mysterious disappearance of their accountant. The discussion centers around the death of Rook, with gang member Tun recounting the events of that fateful night. Tun describes how they were engaged in drug sales at their usual location when they noticed a figure lurking in the shadows, watching them intently. The presence of this individual was disconcerting. While Tun was occupied with a customer, Rook, undeterred by fear, chose to approach the stranger. Rook sought to understand the stranger's intentions and the reason for their scrutiny. When the figure remained silent, Rook's frustration escalated, leading him to attempt a punch. However, before he could make contact, the stranger retaliated with an axe, severing Rook's hand and causing him to collapse, bleeding profusely. After witnessing the attack, Tun claims he pursued the assailant, managing to scare him off. Cain, however, finds this hard to believe and laughs derisively, suggesting that Tun lacks the strength to intimidate anyone. He accuses Tun of fabricating the story, asserting that it was actually Tun who fled in fear. Enraged by Cain's taunts, Tun threatens him, prompting the rest of the gang to rally behind him, ready to confront Cain. In a shocking twist, Cain reveals himself as the murderer of Rook, causing the gang to recoil in fear. Bez, in a fit of anger, demands that Cain leave the bar. As she yells, the bouncers, whom Cain had previously incapacitated, regain consciousness and attempt to confront him again. Yet, Cain swiftly overpowers them, showcasing his formidable strength. He then brandishes a double-barreled shotgun, asserting his dominance over the situation and taking the gang hostage. He demands to know the whereabouts of their leader, Lincoln, a corrupt businessman and loan shark who will stop at nothing to make illicit profits. Ironically, Lincoln is also Cain's brother. Hyde, Lincoln's loyal assistant, takes center stage instead of Lincoln himself, immediately recognizing Cain upon his arrival. He introduces Cain to the gang as Lincoln's brother, a man who made a poor choice that led to his incarceration. Hyde does not shy away from ridiculing Cain, taunting him about his facial scars and insinuating that he may have suffered abuse during his time behind bars. As the atmosphere becomes increasingly charged, one of the bouncers makes another attempt to assault Cain. Before the bouncer can reach him, Cain fires a shot at his kneecap, causing a devastating injury. The bouncer crumples to the floor, howling in agony. Without a hint of compassion, Cain delivers a kick to his face, rendering him unconscious. Despite Cain's display of brutality, Hyde remains unconvinced that Cain is responsible for Rook's death, a skepticism influenced by Tun's previous comments. To dispel any doubts, Cain produces Rook's severed hand from a plastic bag and tosses it to Tun, who hesitantly opens it, leaving no room for further skepticism. With the gang now aware of Cain's cold-blooded nature and his shotgun in hand, they find themselves compelled to obey his orders. After delivering a severe beating to Hyde, Cain holds him and Lincoln accountable for the circumstances that led to his imprisonment. He instructs Hyde to contact Lincoln and bring him to the bar. With the gang subdued, Cain begins to recount his story, unreservedly sharing how he transformed into the person he is today. He starts by reflecting on his life a few years prior when he was merely a struggling boxer. At that time, Cain sought financial assistance from Lincoln to launch a business. However, Lincoln was preoccupied with a card game alongside Rook and his accountant, Stokes. The trio was in a foul mood, having lost bets on Cain, who had failed to lose a boxing match when it would have been financially advantageous for them. Before Lincoln could respond to Kane's plea, Rook derided him, following his own lead and mocking Kane for his seemingly ludicrous request. Lincoln initially declines to provide C the loan, citing C's unsatisfactory history as the reason. As Kane prepares to depart, Lincoln intervenes and proposes a deal. He will lend Kane the money if Kane agrees to perform a task for him. With no alternatives available, Kane consents without knowing the specifics of the assignment. He is directed to Hyde's office, where he receives instructions for his task. He is instructed to steal a plastic bag from a destitute woman and return it to the office. The assignment appears straightforward, so Kane proceeds with it. However, once he takes the bag, the woman begins to pursue him frantically, as if her life hinges on retrieving it. The pursuit escalates until the woman is tragically struck by a vehicle. Shocked by the incident, C is promptly arrested at the scene. A few days later, Kane encounters Detective O'Hara, a seasoned officer who has dedicated years to investigating Lincoln's illicit operations. During their discussion, O'Hara uncovers the grim reality of Lincoln's lending practices. Lincoln preys on vulnerable individuals in need of financial assistance. After providing the loans, Lincoln's associates reclaim the money before the victims can utilize it, plunging them further into debt. This cycle ultimately results in the confiscation of the victims' personal assets, including their homes and cars. The detective urges Kane to betray Lincoln and reveal his criminal activities. However, despite the revelations of Lincoln's malevolence, Kane chooses to remain loyal to his brother, a decision that binds him to 3 serious charges: robbery, manslaughter, and organized crime. Kane clings to the hope that his brother will eventually come to his aid, which prevents him from surrendering. Soon after, Kane is introduced to Sergeant Evans, a formidable and ruthless interrogator known for his brutal tactics. Evans is a corrupt officer who employs torture to extract confessions from suspects, often acting without the consent of the detectives. Kane endures a brutal beating during his interrogation. Despite his attempts to resist, his hands are restrained, and the relentless blows from Evans ultimately render him unconscious. Consequently, Kane is transferred to Belmarsh Prison, notorious for its squalid and violent atmosphere, often referred to as the meat grinder due to the extreme brutality within its walls. Lacking any prior criminal history, Kane encounters significant obstacles in this unforgiving setting. On his very first day, he is unexpectedly assaulted by a formidable inmate. Although Kane fights back, the confrontation quickly spirals into a chaotic melee involving numerous prisoners. Despite managing to take down several of his assailants, he is ultimately overwhelmed. The group savagely beats him, resulting in the loss of his front teeth. Following this ordeal, Kane is fitted with metal dentures, which he surprisingly grows to appreciate. These dentures enhance his intimidating appearance, aligning with the harsh realities of prison life. Meanwhile, Kane's mother, who is still alive, makes a visit to see him in jail. Mrs. Burgess informs Kane that Lincoln holds him responsible for the circumstances that led to his incarceration. She reveals that Lincoln has chosen not to intervene on his behalf, leaving Kane to confront the repercussions on his own. The realization that Lincoln has forsaken him fills Kane with a sense of betrayal. His loyalty to his brother now feels futile, particularly since Lincoln's actions contributed to his imprisonment. Despite this painful truth, Kane remains resilient and asks his mother to encourage Lincoln to reach out to him. As days go by without any communication from Lincoln, no visits, calls, or letters, Kane comes to the stark realization that he is utterly alone and must depend solely on himself for survival. Throughout his time in prison, Kane faces frequent assaults from other inmates, often unaware of the motivations behind these attacks. With no alternative, he begins to defend himself in preparation for future confrontations. Kane embarks on a demanding regimen of physical and mental training, pushing his limits each day. One afternoon in the prison yard, he is confronted by 2 inmates. Thanks to his rigorous training, he swiftly overpowers them with a few well-placed punches. In the aftermath of his victory, one of the defeated inmates reveals a startling truth: Lincoln has put a 20,000-pound bounty on Kane's head. This revelation explains the relentless targeting he has faced from other prisoners. Consumed by anger, Kane finds renewed purpose in his struggle. His thirst for revenge against those who have shattered his life propels him onward. The bounty attracts more inmates daily, but with each confrontation, Kane grows stronger both physically and mentally. His resolve intensifies as the number of adversaries increases. Each confrontation inflicts wounds on Kane, prolongs his imprisonment, and results in additional days spent in solitary confinement. The other inmates resort to using anything available as weapons against him. At one point, they even create a makeshift version of napalm, a highly flammable substance, which scorches part of Kane's face. The relentless pain and ongoing assaults gradually morph him into a ruthless, bloodthirsty creature. He becomes unrecognizable to himself, with his only aim being survival at any price. In his fight to endure, Kane shows no mercy, even towards the prison guards. Several guards suffer severe injuries due to his violent outbursts. After 3 years in prison, his mother visits him with heartbreaking news. She has pancreatic cancer and limited time left. This revelation devastates Kane, yet he refrains from disclosing the painful truth about Lincoln's betrayal. As her sole confidant, he opts to shield her from the anguish of knowing what her other son has done. As time goes on, Mrs. Burgess's health continues to decline. One day, Detective O'Hara comes to see Kane, who is recuperating in the hospital following another brutal altercation with fellow inmates. During their discussion, Kane receives shocking information. Sergeant Evans, the corrupt officer who tormented him, was actually acting as a spy for Lincoln. He realizes that Evans was one of Lincoln's informants within the system, monitoring his every move. Detective O'Hara reveals that Evans has been dismissed after uncovering his treachery. O'Hara also confirms Kane's suspicions. Lincoln wants him dead. The detective once again urges Kane to betray Lincoln. This time, Kane consents, but only under one condition. He wishes for a final meeting with his ailing mother. This arrangement sets the stage for the scene presented at the story's outset. During his hospital visit, Kane devises an escape plan and successfully executes it, embarking on his quest for vengeance. In the present, 2 gang members implore Kane for permission to use the restroom, but he denies their request, instructing them to take care of it where they are. Hyde, weary of Kane's lengthy and disturbing tales, attempts to assert himself and confronts him. Kane responds by compelling Hyde to kneel, warning him that whatever he utters next will be his last. Lincoln arrives at the bar with 3 associates, taken aback to find Kane waiting for him. Upon seeing his brother, whom he regards as his greatest adversary, Kane's hostility intensifies. He swiftly disarms Lincoln and his men, forcing them to join the rest of the gang. While Kane is poised to exact his revenge, he first demands an explanation for Lincoln's desire to see him dead. After a feeble display of brotherly affection, Lincoln finally confesses the truth. He claims he had no choice but to place a bounty on Kane's head due to a report from one of his spies indicating that Kane intended to betray him. Aware of the complete narrative, Kane reveals that this information originated from Sergeant Evans. He informs Lincoln that Evans deceived him and that placing trust in a corrupt officer over his own brother was a grave error. Kane then discloses that Evans is no longer a threat, as he recently located him at his new job and, after a fierce confrontation, killed him with a hammer strike to the head. Impressed by Kane's cunning and meticulous planning, Lincoln attempts to broker peace, offering Kane a fresh start and a new life. However, Kane disregards Lincoln's overtures and shifts his focus to Hyde. Without hesitation, he shoots Hyde and delivers a brutal blow to his head, resulting in a painful death. The violence leaves everyone in attendance in shock, and the brutal demise of Hyde instills fear within the gang. Still grappling with the loss of his most trusted aide, Lincoln is dealt another severe blow. Kane reveals to him that only £1,500 remain in his account, indicating that Kane's vendetta has reached beyond just Evans. After his escape, Kane also confronts Stokes, Lincoln's accountant. Recalling their earlier encounter, Kane approaches Stokes, who attempts to intimidate him by brandishing a shotgun. However, Kane dismisses the threat as a joke and swiftly disarms Stokes. Recognizing he is outmatched, Stokes pleads for mercy and agrees to comply with Kane's demands. Kane coerces him into draining Lincoln's accounts, seizing nearly all of Lincoln's funds. Subsequently, Kane donates the $2 million he extracted from Lincoln's account to the families affected by Lincoln's lending practices. With his finances depleted, Lincoln finds himself left with only his gang for support and feeling assured by their numbers. Lincoln is convinced that C will meet his end that night, especially since C has only 2 bullets remaining while the gang consists of 10 members. However, Kane calmly asserts that he only requires 1 bullet, and that bullet is intended for Lincoln. As the tension escalates, Lincoln spots Bez stealthily approaching C from behind, preparing to strike. Seizing this moment, Lincoln continues to provoke Kane, keeping him engaged and distracted. While Cain is preoccupied with Lincoln's taunts, Bez crashes a bottle over his head, igniting a fierce brawl. Cain reacts quickly, shooting one gang member in the chest, but the others swiftly overpower him and manage to disarm him. Unable to confront Cain in close combat, the gang resorts to hurling bottles and glasses at him. Bez then supplies them with a bag filled with iron rods, hammers, and knives, urging them to finish Cain off. Despite the arsenal, Cain's formidable strength, unyielding resilience, and combat prowess enable him to dominate his attackers. He systematically takes them down with brutal efficiency. Amidst the turmoil, Tun attempts to flee as usual, but this time he returns wielding a submachine gun. In an unexpected turn, none of Tun's shots find their mark on Cain. Instead, he inadvertently shoots one of his own gang members. Cain seizes the opportunity, snatching the gun from Tun. Armed with the new weapon, Cain proceeds to eliminate several more gang members. The remaining gang members launch a final assault, attacking Cain with kicks, punches, and knives, but he methodically dispatches them in horrific fashion. One gang member suffers a broken arm and is struck violently in the head, while another meets his demise as Cain sinks his teeth into his neck like a predator. The final adversary meets his demise as Cain repeatedly stabs him in the throat. By the conclusion of the fierce confrontation, only 3 individuals remain: Bez, Lincoln, and Cain. Lincoln aims a shotgun at Cain, revealing that he was indifferent to Cain's potential betrayal. He confesses to placing a bounty on Cain's head solely because Cain's actions were tarnishing Lincoln's reputation with his associates. After this revelation, Lincoln pulls the trigger, but the weapon fails to fire. It is empty. Cain, aware of the gun's lack of ammunition, laughs at Lincoln's blunder and takes pleasure in not being deceived by his brother's previous lies. In a fit of rage and desperation, Lincoln seizes a knife handed to him by Bez and charges at Cain. A brutal knife fight ensues between the two brothers. The struggle is fierce, but ultimately, Cain prevails and stabs Lincoln, delivering long-awaited retribution for his brother's malevolent actions. With Lincoln vanquished, Cain turns his attention to Bez, who remains alive, but is surrounded by the bodies of the gang she has faithfully served for years. Cain, showing no inclination to harm a woman, even one who attempted to kill him, chooses to spare her and departs, leaving Bez to confront the repercussions of her decisions. In the closing moments, one of Lincoln's former victims checks their account balance and is astonished to discover a deposit. This suggests that Cain has managed to partially atone for his brother's wrongdoings by redistributing the ill-gotten gains. Subscribe to watch more videos like this, leave a comment about your favorite movie, and we will make it next. Thanks for watching.